The Serpent and the Wings of Night, or should I call it The Serpent and the Rekindling of my vampire phase, the resurgence of the vampire era. Let's get into it. What is up, y'all? Welcome back to The Secret Life of B. I'm B, and as promised, I have my The Serpent and the Wings of Night review video for you guys, because, whoa, I finished this yesterday, and I gotta talk about it before the thoughts leave my head. Okay, so let's get into it, y'all. So this video will be a review on The Serpent and the Wings of Night. It will not be spoiler-free, so I assume anyone watching this video either doesn't care or they've already read the book. Sounds great? Okay, good. So, even though, let me just give you a small rundown on the book. Vampires, gods, killer games, Kajari, human, vampire, and forbidden love, maybe, rivals to lovers. There's a lot going on here, okay? Now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into this actual review, okay? Let me start by saying I rated this a 3.75 star. Enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. There's parts of this that I could not give it higher score for, mostly within the writing itself. I also, sidebar here, have any of you guys gotten this book on Amazon? And if so, did they print the book out incorrectly? Because tell me why this book is printed upside down, if you could even see that. Why is the 10 pages of this book printed upside down? I don't get it. I don't get it. But I'm too lazy to get my money back, so we'll keep this version. I've already tabbed it, so I love tabbing. But anyways, let's get into this review. So the book starts off pretty promising in my opinion. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the backstory that we're thrown into. I'm intrigued by the main character and her connection with Vincent, her dad, and you know, I'm also interested in what's going to happen in this Kajari game. But I will say, after she gets into the game, I wasn't really sure how I felt about it, because the first game itself, I wasn't really a fan of. You know, the game where, spoiler, the blood-born vampires are like turned into these thoughtless monsters and they're fighting them off. I didn't really enjoy that game. I felt like I was a bit confused why we were reading it. I don't know how, you know, I know it connects to Nixia's past. This is like all for Nixia, but I wasn't too sure how exciting it was to read it. It also just felt a little bit confusing. I don't know. It's my least favorite game out of the bunch of games they've done. And they started off with it. So again, I was like, well, I don't know how I feel about this book. I also was noticing early on that there's a lot of characters in this book. There's a lot of vampires in this game, right? The more you read through the story, the less you see them. And I feel like, for it to be compared to the Hunger Games, I still feel like we got a sense more of the community in the Hunger Games, right? This sort of feels like these vampires show up magically when it's time for another game, but these games are going on for 4 months, so within those 4 months, I feel like we should have at least had more interactions with the other vampires in this game. There was a few select side characters that we got to see, and still, I just feel like it was hard to get a sense of how many people were there, and like what the lay of the land was, and so I wish that was done a little bit differently. Another thing that I noticed very early on is how much context we don't have until like they're just about ready to give it to us. And I'm not totally sure I enjoy that. Now listen, I understand that you don't want it to be too exposition heavy. No one wants to read a heavy dialogue of the history of the gods and goddesses and the history of the games, but I felt like it was to the point where I was very confused and very overwhelmed sometimes. Like all of a sudden we get thrown a new piece of information and we're already in the action. And I just wish there was ways that the author gave us this information earlier, so that I had more time with it and so I could just enjoy the action that I was reading. And what's interesting is that normally you find out things within the series, like as the series goes, as the book goes along, you find out, as the main character finds out, all this new information, right? But this main character, Oriya, she already knows all this information. Like most of the stuff that we learn is stuff that she already knew. She's just like, oh, bringing it up now, right? And I don't know if I enjoyed that. You know, I just felt like we were the last to know about stuff. And it made for a very overwhelming reading experience. But let's get into what I did like, right? First of all, the main characters. I should start off with that, honestly. But the two main characters in this book, Oriah and Rain, I think they're very, very good characters to read. I think there was, individually, their own past stories that you really are looking forward to figuring out more of, especially with Rain, because he's a huge question mark at first. You don't know anything about him. But when they're together, that tension, you can't deny that tension, y'all. You can't deny that. And I knew right away that I was going to enjoy their love story, and I did. I felt like there was a mutual respect for one another at first. I didn't really feel like it was insta-lovey. You know, people don't like insta-love. I didn't feel like there was insta-love. I thought that they started off not even really wanting to be, well, at least Oriah didn't want to be around him. Then they started off as partners, and then they're working together. Again, they have mutual respect for each other. And then they started having romantic feelings for each other, and I feel like the progression of that was pretty realistic, and I really enjoyed it. It made for some really great tension moments. And boy, the blood feeding scene that they have in that cave, I reread it a few times. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, I think I enjoyed that more than the actual like spicy scene that happens in the end. But either way, really, really great buildings of tension and great romantic aspects of this story. Now let's get into the fantasy aspects of this story. When I first started this book, I asked myself, could this bring back my vampire era? And yes, it did. Oh, it did so well. I just want to read more, okay? More in this world, but also more in just the span of vampires in general. And I found this book to be very interesting in the way it portrays its vampires because, you know, I've only read 2 other vampire series, but I read the whole series. So I felt like I had a lot of experience with vampires, right? Twilight and Vampire Academy. Those 2 were urban fantasy. So we are getting vampires in the, you know, human world. Of course, there are other aspects of those books that have like the vampire worlds coming in, but for the most part, it's taking place on Earth, you know, in the States, right? Here we have completely removed universe from everything else. Like the whole world is something new, and the lore of the vampires is also something new. And I also felt like sometimes I even forgot I was reading about vampires because the things that I've gotten used to with those other vampire books felt like they weren't the main focus here with these vampires, right? Besides the wings, which actually was emphasized more than I thought I was just dealing with like immortal creatures, you know? They drink blood, they can fly, they're fast, but yeah, I felt like it was so interesting the way that they were written because I just didn't get a sense that I'm reading about vampires every second. But that also could have been an issue as well because sometimes it was hard to differentiate, first of all, like the vampires themselves, because again, there's so many lack of context. I still really don't know a whole lot of what separates, more specifically, the House of Night and the House of Shadow. House of Blood, I feel like is very obvious what separates them. But, you know, sometimes I'm like, what's going on here? Who can do what? What powers belong to what? You know, that was a thing. And also, because Oriah is human and she's in this game, and obviously you want to have some faith that this character can survive, I wondered how the heck is she gonna make it past vampires that are faster than her, that are stronger than her, that can heal faster than her. And then there's parts in the book towards the end, especially where she keeps on mentioning, I'm faster than this vampire. So I'm sitting here wondering, okay, can these vampires actually move faster than humans, or what's going on? Are they just moving slower than her because they're injured? Like sometimes the way that the vampires are described is a bit confusing sometimes. But anyways, besides the point, I really do enjoy the whole aspects of the different houses and the different species of vampires. I find that very interesting. And someone compared the second book to like how the Game of Thrones is kind of set up, where there's like, you know, a race to gain power amongst the houses, and I think that's something that's going to come into play in the second book, and I'm very excited about that. In regards to the Kajari itself, I don't know about y'all, but I actually was enjoying the Kajari. I found that as the books, the games went on, the games were more exciting. I will say the second and third game was the best games for me. The first, again, I don't really like the first game. The last game, ended a bit too quick. I feel like it was a bit too simple, but I feel like the things that were going on within the game made it more interesting than the game itself, if that makes sense. Like, for example, the people that she was fighting were caricatures of the gods themselves, made from actual decomposed bodies from people she competed with earlier. I thought that was so cool. But yeah, I really enjoyed the games. Some people said that the games felt silly. Some people said that the games lasted for too long. I thought that the pacing for this book was great. One great thing about this book is the pacing. The pacing is, in my opinion, very fast. There was very little parts that I felt like I was bored or didn't feel like reading. I feel like because you're dropped into the game so quickly, it keeps your attention pretty efficiently. And also, I did buddy read this book, so I think that's also why I finished this book faster than I normally would. I think I read this book in like a week or two. But yeah, I really enjoyed the games. I liked the lore. When we figured out what was happening, when the context was finally given to us, I did like the lore and how it tied back to the gods and the goddesses. And again, there's so much you can do with this universe and the whole backstory of the gods and goddesses. Clearly, there are different worlds that are attached to a certain god and goddess. So I'm imagining the series is just going to go into wider directions, which is really cool. Now let's get into this ending. You know, on Booktok, everyone that was talking about this book was hyping up how crazy this ending was, how much of a plot twist it was. And you know, me and my friend and I were going back and forth, giving our theories on what was going to happen. She was actually right about a lot of it. But I feel like for the most part, we were able to kind of figure out what was happening as things went on. So I wouldn't say this is like a total shock, but at the same time, they did shock me. Like, I had theories, but I wasn't too sure about those theories. So I had ideas floating around, but I wasn't too sure. I wasn't 100% sure on what those theories were going to be. And so when it did happen, I was shocked, but at the same time, I had an inkling. You know what I mean? But yeah, the ending where, spoiler alert, you find out that Oriya is half human, and that she's more than likely blood related to Vincent, and that Rain was in the Kajari because he's actually the heir to the Rishan vampires, and he's there to protect his people because Vincent, the fucking war criminal, get into him in a second, is just out there tearing his people apart. And you know, I thought it was interesting the way they did it because it did rely on whether or not Oriya was even going to give up that wish. And I remember reading it thinking, oh my god, girl, you are so dumb. Why would you phrase it that way? She specifically said, I wish Rain had won. I'm thinking, oh my god, they're gonna kill you, because if he wins, that means you lost, that means you're dead. Anyways, that's not all what happened, obviously. They both won, and he got the last wish because she used up her wish. And so that's how everything comes to be. He ends up killing Vincent, which, you know, I was happy about.
Death to all of them.
Okay, some people like Vincent. I'm surprised about that. Listen, I was upset with Oriya the whole time because she's trying to make excuses for Vincent. She's trying to justify why she still cares about him. And I'm like, okay, get it. That's your father. He took care of you. But also he lied to you for several years. And he also was a war criminal. Not only did he kill all those innocent Rishan people, but he also killed humans in the making as well, and he thinks so little of you, and you're still half human, so half of you he doesn't consider even worthy of life. Like, that whole scene where he's taking her to the room where people are feeding off of the humans, and he's like, they're nothing, these people are not important. Like, I was so disgusted by that. And then right after, he proceeds to fucking attack Oriya. So, at that point, I'm like, Vincent, you can go. You've overstayed your welcome. We don't need you no more. And my friend was not trustworthy of him the whole time. And you know what? She was right. But anyways, when it comes to Rain, as I said earlier, I wasn't too sure how I felt about the progression of the relationship after we find out who he is, because there's a few things that he says, and granted, he is putting on a show, right? But I just feel like it was unnecessary, okay? In the last game, towards the end, when he is talking to his people as they are overthrowing the Kiaj vampires, hope I said that right, Rain said something that really made my eyebrow raise, that really made me uncomfortable. I'm like, why did you say that? He's like, I'm gonna go and have sex with her and make sure it hurts. Just like Vincent raped their queen. So we know that Vincent is a terrible person. and I know that he's putting on a show. But you read that part, and then right after he realizes, oh, that didn't work. Let me say something even more crazier, and I'm just thinking, well, you don't have to say it at all then. What was the point?
What was the reason? What was the reason? What was the reason?
Because now they didn't care about that. What they cared about was you saying, "Oh, we'll kill the other Rishon, or we'll kill the other Hiad vampires. Like we'll overthrow the whole kingdom." And I'm like, you didn't gotta say all that. Because if I was Araya, I would be so taken aback and disrespected and offended by that. Like, I just told you something so private about my history and my trauma, and you say that. Okay. And also it was weird because he's experienced that himself. So anyways, I didn't like that. And I also felt like, just in general, her seeing him kill Vincent like that, and now she's kind of a prisoner of her own house. I feel like there are some things that are just past the point of no return at this point. So even though there's obviously love that he has for Araya, and Araya, she still feels something for him, but she's like refusing to allow that to come to the forefront. I just don't know if I can get behind this romance anymore. Like, I feel like the things that happen are just, I don't know. I mean, we get an explanation for everything from Rain at the end. He explains that he didn't want this. He was turned, obviously, by the heir of the Rishon vampires, right? And so he didn't ask to be the heir. He didn't even know he was going to be the heir when Vincent went and killed the other heir. And so he tried, he literally like left his people for several years. It comes back when he realizes, you know, Vincent's doing all these terrible things. And that's why he comes into the Qadari to try and save the day for his people. But like, still, I just felt so maybe disappointed in the way he went about it. You know what I mean? And even with his way of working with the blood-born vampires, he didn't even want to do that. He was kind of forced into it as well. So again, I think maybe, given the way things kind of went down, maybe he is going to be forgiven by Araya. Maybe I can get back on board with this relationship. But again, I don't know. There might be some crazy stuff that happens in book 2. But anyways, that's my chaotic review. This had no structure. I just wanted to talk about it. All right. I really enjoyed it. It was a page turner. It was so fun to buddy read this book. I highly suggest buddy reading books on the Fable app. You can comment under each chapter. You don't have to give yourself a spoiler. You can turn off the notifications, and then you can go into the app and just comment once you've reached that chapter. It's so fun. Again, I'm back in my vampire phase. I am rereading Vampire Academy. I've been trying to get through that. Again, I'm a mood reader, so I didn't feel like reading. I bought Crave a long time ago, like a year ago. Haven't read that yet, but I got Crave also. Do not judge me, but I did buy Midnight Sun. Okay, I know. Listen, I wanted to walk down memory lane without having to reread Twilight. But at the same time, I wanted to laugh. I wanted a joke. I wanted to be a little bit silly, goofy. Okay, I just wanted something where I can turn my brain off for a second and just enjoy the feeling that an old story, an old world would come and bring me. That's it. Anyways, guys, that's my video about The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this book, if you thought the same things I did, if you rated it higher or lower, if you buddy read this. Highly suggest again. And you know, if you are into vampires just like I am, okay, if you have any other vampire recs, let me know, okay, because again, I think I'm gonna get my vampire era this year, right? So I really appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. I never understood why somebody was